Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Science of Spirit. I'm your host, Janice, and this is episode number 1. I am a trained hypnotist and channel. I was trained by Dr. Hugh Harmon and Pamela Chilton, who are both clinical hypnotherapists in Palm Desert, and they have a hypnotherapy school there. And I've probably been channeling for about 10 years now. But I'll tell you a little bit about how this whole thing got started. I was taking hypnosis classes with them, and at some point they said that they were going to do a small class on learning to channel your higher self. So I thought, okay, why not? Had never done anything like that before, really not considered myself to have any, psychic ability for the most part, although I will say I had done technical remote viewing, probably back around the year 2000 or so. And I realized that really worked. And technical remote viewing really does work. So for those of you who have, never really experienced that sort of thing, I really urge you to. It's really kind of interesting. But with the remote viewing, it really does require being with a group so that you can pool all of your results together. So me just working on my own with the remote viewing, it was definitely difficult to flesh things out. I would put targets that I had already done back into the pile, kind of mix it up, so that I would draw that again and do another session and then pool all of those results. But it was really time consuming. And really, I didn't find out about things until after the fact. Then I could look at those results that I got and realize, okay, I really did get something. Because I was starting to get stuff on 911 before that happened, but I didn't realize it. So, it wasn't terribly helpful in a lot of ways for me, but I do think technical remote viewing is very, very cool to use. So anyway, I digress. They decided to have this class online, and I think there were about 4 or 5 of us that decided to do this. So she would give us different things to channel our higher selves about, and we would do those sessions. And then at the end, she'd kind of have us all send what we got, and then they would go ahead and do a channeling session themselves. Now, Dr. Hugh Harmon is an unconscious channel, much like Edgar Cayce was. So Pamela will ask him questions, and then he will channel his higher self or higher spirit for those answers. So one of the things we channeled was we basically did a health reading on a client that they had that gave us permission to do that. And so we pulled all our results, and oh my gosh, mine, I bombed. I mean, I could have guessed what was wrong with this woman versus, the information I got. So I wasn't so sure that this was going to be panning out too well for me. But I continued on, and one of the next things we did was getting information about Egypt, which I'll have to read that to you, my channeling sessions from that, because that was really pretty interesting. And it ended up being really correct. So that was the first one that I kind of thought, okay, I'm getting a little something here. We're getting somewhere. So then we did another one, which was on an airplane that had crashed in the ocean, which ended up being Air France 447, that I think went down in about 2009. But they hadn't brought out the black box, or they hadn't found it at that time that we had done the channeling session, which I think was a year later. So we all did that, and we sent in our results to Pamela and Hugh. So they read off the information that they had channeled, which was basically that the pilots had flown into a storm, that lightning had hit the plane, and it went down and everybody was killed. So now I'll read to you the information that I got. Okay, my higher self said, well, I asked, Air France plane that went down, what caused it? Answer, pilot error, loss of control of plane in stormy weather, wind shear, needed to bring tail up, cracked off, fell fast. No survivors. So I had asked Pamela and Hugh if they had gotten anything on pilot error or on the tail cracking off, and she said, yeah, the tail did crack off. So I'm like, okay, but you didn't really get anything on pilot error. And she said, well, no, but, they did fly into a storm and stuff. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I kind of left it at that. I was still reasonably pleased that I had gotten this, fairly well. But at that point, I honestly didn't know Hugh and Pamela all that well. So, they could have changed things. They could have been going along with something I said, that type of thing. With this sort of stuff, I really don't trust people necessarily. I've learned to be more trusting, but now I have a tool to find out if they're trusting or not. So anyway, they finally brought the black box up from this flight 447. And the official cause of the crash was due to pilot error. And they said what happened was the pilots were deciding to do some kind of an evasive maneuver with this storm. And the plane, somehow they sent it up in an odd angle, and it just went slamming down into the ocean. So they actually said that it was pilot error that caused the crash. So I thought that was really interesting, and that was really, really good confirmation for me to kind of prove to myself that what I was channeling was pretty darn accurate. So over the years, I've really had the luxury of having Dr. Harmon and Pamela be able to channel what I've channeled. And that was a huge benefit as a learning tool that most people don't get that opportunity to have. So it helped me out a lot. But I came to find out with doing health readings that my higher self was not going to do health readings. And I kind of can see why, because I would have had a tendency to have, let people call in like for health readings, that sort of thing, and have done that. But pretty much that wasn't going to be the way this was going to go. So I don't do health readings. My higher self doesn't do health readings. And I basically don't do readings at all for people. This information, this is the only way this seems to be going out, is right here on this channel, on these podcasts. And hopefully it will be of some benefit to you. Now, something else I have done a lot of is channeling my own past lives. Now, I've done this through regressing myself, but also I've been regressed by a hypnotherapist as well. And also a long time ago, before I ever started channeling, and I really hadn't even signed up for hypnosis school at this point, I knew of Dr. Harmon and his ability to be able to channel unconsciously. So he did channel several of my past incarnations, which was really a cool thing to have. And they don't do that anymore. But it was very beneficial to me. So I've got that information as well. And I may share some of those. We'll see. But definitely we will go through several incarnations, and I'll share any other channelings I have that might be of interest to people at this point. I will probably start off by sharing the information that I got on Lemuria, which was kind of where my higher self started out. It's the beginning, at least, of being here on this planet. So that's kind of interesting information. So I hope you stick around for these podcasts. There's going to be some interesting stuff that's historical, some maybe surprising, some not so much. And when I do read channelings to you, they're always going to be word for word what my higher self said. I don't embellish anything. I don't take anything out, unless it's something totally personal for my own information. So that way you can make your own determination. You don't have to have me giving you my interpretation of it, because that's where things can definitely go wrong, and I don't want that to happen. Now, I might give my commentary on what I think it is, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm right on everything, because occasionally I'll channel something that I don't know what the heck they're talking about, but I leave it in anyway in the hopes that someone else knows exactly what it is. And maybe that information can be of benefit in some way, maybe from a historical nature, or from a technical, scientific nature, or just to be able to help people in their ordinary lives. Now, channeling itself can have a lot of pitfalls. For one thing, you need to know if you are in a good trance state for channeling. Now, for me, I put myself into what is referred to as an alpha-theta state. And the way I know that I'm there is that I start seeing little vision snippets, and what I really refer to it as spirit chatter, because I'll see little visions, usually mixed with talking, some words, and it'll go, for about 2 seconds into one thing and then suddenly something else. Like, for example, I might see two people sitting in a pool talking about a martini they're drinking, and then all of a sudden it switches to somebody walking down the street saying, "What did you do?" It just, nothing makes any sense. It's just snippets of spirit. So I know that I'm talking to the spirit realm. But then once that occurs, I ask my higher self to get rid of any spirits that are in my vicinity, because I don't want to be picking up on that stuff. But I use it as a tool to know that I'm in the proper state for channeling. So it's very important that as a channel that you make sure that you are not picking up on other spirits in the vicinity. You need to know exactly who you're channeling. Otherwise, you could get all kinds of information. And you may get somebody who really is well-meaning, or somebody who lived back in the day, that knew about whatever it is, your information you're trying to channel. But still, it will be generally their opinion and not the actual truth. So that's why I always talk with my higher self. Now, I could directly channel God as well. There's no reason you can't do that. Or channel specific people or their higher selves. You can do that as well. But I basically stick with my higher self because I have found it to pretty much always be accurate. So I'm sticking with it. I am what you would call a conscious channel versus someone like Edgar Cayce, who was unconscious and was asked questions and then would answer it. And then he had no idea what was being said at all. Much like being in a dream state, or kind of like being asleep, but not really asleep. And with me, I am conscious of what's being said, but I'm not really aware of how it all goes together. I'm aware of the words, let's say, but not of the context or how it all works out. So I don't know that until I am completely done and I sit down to read and make sure that I've written everything legibly. Basically, during a channeling session, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just sitting and waiting for the next word to come up. I'm expecting a word to come to mind, and I just string all the words together, and there you have it. So I hope that gives you enough of an example of what I do and where I'm coming from. Now, I do feel that most people, or really everybody, has access to their higher self in one form or another. Now, some people may be more talented than others at doing channeling. Others may be, get information through meditation. Others will get it in the form of guidance, just in their normal waking life. So all of these tools are really worth exploring for yourself. And I encourage people to try different modalities, such as technical remote viewing. That's a really great starter channeling. I think it's definitely a form of channeling. And definitely meditation, because if you meditate, it tends to recalibrate your frequency more in alignment with your higher self. So it's easier for you to hear what your higher self has to say. I remember when I had just begun to channel, that one of the first visions I actually saw was me sitting in a chair, and then there were these two cables that were going directly to the chair. And then there were hands that opened up those cables, and I was stepping through the cables, which ended up representing opening the lines of communication. So I thought that was really kind of a cool thing. Now, also, when I first started channeling, I was having these vision snippets that I now refer to as spirit chatter. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. So I told Pamela about them, and she found out through higher spirit that, I was tuning into spirit. An example of this was I saw the back end of a truck that was stuck in mud, and there were just these men's legs, and this little child's voice that said something like, "My dad got truck stuck." And it was from a spirit, probably a little short kid that just saw the back end of the truck with the men's legs. He wasn't very tall. And then it might go to something like a woman sitting in a pool drinking a drink and making some kind of a statement that doesn't relate to anything else. So for me, it is a lot like a radio dial, and I'm just dialing down the frequencies, and I just like changing a radio station. You just get, a few seconds of each thing. And so then when I get that, I know I'm in the right channeling state, at least for myself. So that's kind of how that works. So I hope that gives you some kind of an idea of who I am and how I got started and what my training was like. And I've just been practicing over the years. So at one point, I got some information that it would be a good thing for me to be sharing my channeling sessions, especially on the past lives. So that's what I'm attempting to do here. And I'm not real sure where this is really going to go, but I'm going to put it out there and hopefully it will be helpful to somebody. So thank you for listening to The Science of Spirit, and I will have more information to share with you soon.